Normally, when you're terrible at your job, you get fired. But according to new federal audits, when you work at the ATF, which is notoriously terrible at its job, you'll start an illegal scheme to boost salaries, falsify records, and get promoted for it. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. You might vaguely remember a story I covered back in 2021 about an ATF whistleblower who claimed that members of the agency were artificially boosting their salaries and claimed huge amounts of waste and fraud. A lot of this employee's story was dismissed as he had been fired from the agency. He had worked in HR and again claimed that desk monkeys were getting law enforcement availability pay, or LEAP, which was a full 25% increase that was meant for field agents. He discovered this, brought it to his supervisors, who then gave him a bad performance review and kicked him off the team. CBS, of all outlets, broke that story back in 2021, and that was kind of it. Maybe it was because it was the Biden years, maybe it was because people didn't really care, but yeah, we didn't really hear much about it after that. A couple congressmen sent some letters and nothing. We had confirmation from the Office of Personnel Management and the Office of Special Counsel that this was happening. We learned that 94 employees were getting paid more than they should be through this scheme, equating to millions of tax dollars a year. But all they did was suspend the ATF's ability to create certain jobs and classify them for 6 months. Well, for some reason, these accusations have resurfaced a full 4 years later, with a couple of GOP senators demanding an investigation. Now we're learning that the scheme ran even deeper. But before I get into the details here, this video is brought to you by the Attorneys on Retainer program, which is brought to you by the Attorneys for Freedom and the only law firm that exclusively works on self-defense cases. If you ever find yourself in a self-defense incident, as I have covered on this channel before, it is definitely not something that you want to face alone. The folks in the Attorneys on Retainer program are actual attorneys whose entire job it is to give you legal advice and represent you if you use your gun in self-defense. They are not an insurance company, which means that when you call their hotline, you talk to an actual lawyer and not an insurance adjuster. It also means that they don't have the same fine print, so their only requirements are that the incident happened after you signed up and that you reasonably acted in good faith. They cover everything from felonies to misdemeanors, appeals, and even bail bonds. It doesn't even matter if you were a prohibited person or in a gun-free zone. And this year, they've added a ton more features, including coverage for red flag hits. So switch over from your existing self-defense coverage by heading on over to my link down in the description, and you can use code LIBERTYDOLL to get $50 off your individual sign-up. Now, Senators Chuck Grassley and Ernst are attempting to put the DOJ's feet to the fire with a letter that they sent to ATF Acting Director Driscoll, Pam Bondi, and the Assistant AG regarding these allegations from 2021, which they say continued into last year. And worse, they say that the supervisors who overlooked the scheme were promoted. These senators state that they wrote both the ATF and DOJ under Biden in January and September 2024 and got crickets, which sounds pretty on brand. They write, "In our previous letters, we requested the agencies provide us with the ATF Internal Affairs Division, or AID, report and the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, Human Capital Management Evaluation, HCME, audit report." That is a lot of acronyms. Whistleblowers informed us that these reports extensively detailed ATF leadership's involvement in the illegal misclassification scheme even after being notified about the misconduct, and OPM suspended ATF's classification authority after completing their audit. We also asked whether the Biden DOJ held ATF leadership accountable for allowing the illegal misclassification scheme to continue after becoming aware of it, and for retaliating against whistleblowers. Despite the Biden ATF and DOJ stonewalling our efforts by failing to respond, our offices obtained copies of these reports via legally protected whistleblower disclosures. So that means that if not for these whistleblowers, this information never would have gotten out because the ATF and DOJ let it fly off in the wind. That is why we are writing to you today to bring this situation to your attention. As this letter will explain, we strongly believe the information contained in these reports and the other records we've made public are alarming and necessitate immediate corrective action. The IAD report was completed on January 5, 2024, and it highlights considerable evidence of gross waste, fraud and abuse, substantial misconduct and mismanagement, abuse of power, and potential criminal misconduct committed by and under the supervision of then ATF Office of Human Resources and Professional Development, HRPD, Deputy Assistant Director, DAD, Lisa Boykin, and HR Division Chief Ralph Bitlari. Now, I'm going to pause here for a moment and point out that the name Lisa Boykin might also sound familiar to y'all. She is the woman who was appointed to a diversity position and then reclassified after Trump's directives to cut diversity program positions. Just thought that I'd add that fun little layer there. According to the letter, the 2 internal investigations found that despite the OPM suspending the ATF's classification powers, the ATF somehow did it anyway, that entire time. They continued to reclassify HR employees as field agents. The suspension was lifted in 2023, and apparently the OPM just didn't look into it, didn't check in to make sure everything was on the up and up. They just took the ATF's word for it, which a lot of people seem to do these days, getting a lot of other legal, law-abiding people in trouble. Grassley and Ernst provide a few notable examples of this in action. They claim that in February 2020, Bitlari classified a position description from the chief of the ATF's Workforce Wellness and Services Division at the DC headquarters, whose primary duties were to create workforce wellness programs, as a law enforcement position. The person assigned to actually reclassify the position said, whoa guys, wait a minute, this isn't right, and was threatened with insubordination. That employee ultimately recused themselves from the process, and the HR higher-ups went ahead with the reclassification. Boykin later claimed that she didn't know if the person hired to the position had been hired before or after she and Bitlari crafted the job description reclassification. However, a paper trail of emails show that she and the person hired to the position crafted the fake job description themselves, then went on a trip together to a wellness conference in Miami. The report also found that after OPM found the fraud and gave the ATFs its little slap on the wrist saying, "Oh boy, don't you do that again," Boykin and Bitlari relocated a Phoenix office field agent to an admin position at ATF headquarters that OPM had already identified as misclassified, but the ATF duo kept the agent classified as a field agent anyway. OPM said, "Hey, guys, don't do that," and rescind the job offer. Initially, Bitlari agreed, but had a different conversation with Boykin, and they moved forward. The branch chief then called him up, basically saying, "WTF, you know this could be bad news for the ATF, right?" And Bitlari said, "Yes, I am aware of all the potential consequences," and then tried to submit the paperwork to payroll directly to prevent other staff from stopping him. And people question when I say that the government is nothing but a gang of thugs that do whatever they want. On top of it, during the audit and investigations, the ATF's HR department lied, saying that they had taken corrective action to reassign misclassified agents when they hadn't. When investigators interviewed some of these employees, they found that the employees continued to perform all of their administrative duties just under a new law enforcement title and received thousands of dollars of bonuses to do it. To top it off, the investigation found that about a third of all the HR employees, about 100 of them, which is in line with what that early whistleblower said, were actually law enforcement and had been continued to be paid as law enforcement. According to the letter, meaning the ATF relocated 100 of its law enforcement officers, favored officers, from protecting our communities from, quote, violent criminals, criminal organizations, the illegal use and traffic in firearms, the illegal use and storage of explosives, acts of arson and bombings, acts of terrorism, and the illegal diversion of alcohol and tobacco products to administrative positions in ATF HQ, all while unlawfully paying them enhanced law enforcement benefits at the expense of taxpayers. Further, the OPM audit report found that experienced rank-and-file ATF HR employees were passed over for career advancements and promotions because ATF assigned unqualified, inexperienced special agents to these leadership roles within ATF HRPD and paid them more for doing similar work. In this regard, OPM found that ATF's actions are particularly egregious because numerous ATF HR officials attempted to advise and inform ATF leadership of these issues, yet those attempts were rejected and resulted in employees being admonished for their efforts. It's estimated that this cost taxpayers $20 million from 2019 to 2024, though whistleblowers say that this is a very lowball estimate, saying that this is only an estimate of the scheme in the DC headquarters and that this scheme spans across all field offices. And according to reports, once all of this came out the first time, that is when Boykin was promoted to her diversity position and then, quote, senior executive after the diversity cuts. Bitlari was promoted to senior advisor and then acting deputy director of the Justice Management Division. In fact, he was moved to serve directly under the JMD director who ignored whistleblower complaints. Well, what a coincidence! Grassley and Ernst point out that not only is this fraud, waste, abuse, and misconduct, but it's also criminal due to the falsifying of government records. The letter demands that Boykin and Bitlari be held accountable and axed from any leadership positions. Frankly, I think that they should be completely fired altogether. The letter demands a response by the 23rd that outlines how exactly the DOJ plans to address this, as well as answers to their previous letters and demands. We've all known for a long time that the ATF was horribly corrupt, and this provides even more proof. The question is, will Bondi and Driscoll do anything about it? Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I know this was a long one, but that is it for this video. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are new here. Ring that notification bell and drop a comment down below. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe out there and happy shooting.